Hey folks, welcome back. So in this session, I want to start generally thinking about what we want to do with the high-level architecture of how a peer-to-peer chat application would work. Generally, what we're like the features that we want to include in this application, how the data is going to be stored, and because it's a project that is using tokens, not necessarily a token of its own, but it can use like the near protocol token directly. We may also look into like how we can incentivize users to host the data as a way of um, making the data storage a lot more decentralized. Yeah. So let's just start off by switching over to an empty diagram. And what we're going to do here is, so we want to include let's write in text what we want to actually accomplish, what are the features we want to accomplish. And then we can use this as a, oops, so that's weird. Let's get rid of this one. Okay. Let's make the font size a lot larger. Awesome. Okay. So we want direct messaging for the app. We want to be able to allow users to register. So registrations via wallet. We also want to have on the mobile app have a database that will store all the messages, because we're trying to limit the central storage, so we want to have things as decentralized as possible. So as a user, I would like to have my data stored on my own device, or maybe like a SQLite database or something that is shipped with the app. Yeah, let's do that. Stored on the device, either it's mobile, desktop, or web. Then we want to be able to encrypt the data end to end, and we'd like to let me think for a second. What do we like to do? Yeah, we need the users to be able to discover others. Users is another one, and yeah, voice chat is another one too. So voice chat can be accomplished using WebRTC. As far as I can tell, this requires some kind of centralization so that users can easily find each other. So that might be a service that dmechat has to host, and it may not be easy to decentralize that particular bit. So those are what we have. Now on the other page, kind of would like to have a mobile application. Sorry, let me think for a second. Yeah, we definitely need a few different ways of a few different applications. So you could say mobile is the first one. Let's make it large. There we go. web, and desktop. So we want all these three clients to be able to talk to the smart contract that we're going to end up writing on Rust. And the idea is that this contract will hold some information about who the person is. So what they will do is they'll basically, let's make the arrows a little bit nicer. Yeah. And what's going to happen is they will basically be able to register their account. Maybe this one is smaller. They can register an account with the smart contract, and once you know you have an account on the smart contract, it will basically start to help with the discoverability. We also want to, I realized when we have this chat, we would also like features to be able to block other users from contacting us, and we'll get to that as well. We may not do everything in this particular order. I think what we will end up doing is figure out what's the best way to start. Well, we'll reorder everything as necessary. So they'll end up registering with the smart contract, and once they're registered, all the messages that will be sent between the two users is done through at least for now, we need like a centralized server. Yeah, so we would like a server to be able to. So what this server will host is the data related to how to find each other. So basically all the, well, we may end up using a stem server that's freely available from Google, or we may aid in discoverability, so users can find each other and just start conversations. But once the conversations start, they would have to go directly from my device to the other person's device. What I'm trying to avoid is any data stored on the server as much as possible. So this means we can only send messages when both clients are active. So if one person's not active and I send a few messages, we need to, at least for now, the limitation is going to be that it will try to send the message when the person's active again. So basically queuing messages if the recipient is offline. Yeah, so this may be a little bit of a challenge for no, it's fine. We could probably just go ahead and implement that too. It's not really a challenge. Well, maybe it is, but so we can say optionally, if necessary, only if post store messages that are not delivered temporarily. Ideally, we'd like to send the message directly from one machine to the other. But if both machines, one machine is offline, we may opt to make the servers host some data so that it's delivered, and we may limit it to like 7 days max. Um, so DMs, we talked about registration, we talked about. I'm going to elaborate a little bit more about how the registration would end up working. In Near protocol, if a smart contract has an address such as dmechat.app, what we'll do is we'll let users register a sub name on this account. What that will be is you know, guest, Bob.app, and let's just say we have another account that is just for the guests of these users. So that what this means is that I don't need to know anything about wallets or smart contracts or anything like that. As a user, I just want to go ahead and create my account and just start chatting with people that I want to chat with, right? So this would be the application's main smart contract with I'm not sure exactly what goes in here yet, but we'll have a smart contract just to hold the data for the guests, which means that I don't have my own Near wallet. I just have a wallet that's hosted for me by the guest account. And what that'll happen is when I do the register, I'll ask, I'd like to register Bob.guest. And what the smart contract will do is it's going to kind of pretend that this particular account exists, and it's safe to do that because bob.guest.app.dmechat.near can only be created by this guest.app. So that's the hierarchy. But once the account is created, the ownership of the account actually belongs to this particular person, right? So that's kind of how we're going to manage the accounts to be actually created. And then let's say Lisa wants to create an account as well. What will end up happening is there. So she'll end up go ahead and basically create an account on the guest account. We also want to talk about the data that's being stored. Okay, so I'm thinking so this is the app, right? Well, basically these are the 3 different apps that we're going to end up having, and they are all going to have a SQLite server, a SQLite database that will basically hold all the necessary messages, whether it is a direct message or if it's a message that's between groups. If I'm interested in if I'm participating in one of the groups, it's just going to make sure that that data is stored in that SQL database. There is a chance that at some point this data will grow too large, and for that we can also provide different alternatives. So to talk about the alternatives, let's talk about how we can actually incentivize nodes. So it's a user, it's another user. Let's pretend like we have 3 users, right? This one is Bob, Gary, and then these are like 3 different users. They all have different interests. For example, Bob and Gary both have an interest in baking, let's say, and Lisa and Gary are both nurses, so they're going to be also interested yeah, or doctors. Yeah, they're both doctors. So they're both going to be interested in this particular group as well. Um, over a period of time, this may grow very large, and it's not necessarily fair for the users to host that data in its entirety. So what we'll do is the SQL server that's not SQL server, sorry, the SQLite database. Um, that SQL database that's on each of the individual users is only going to store things like direct messages. DMs are going to be stored in its like the whole log. Those are private to me, so as a user, I'd like to have everything on my machine. And for the groups, like baking or doctors, we'll have like a time bound storage of maybe 30 days or a setting in size in like in MB. Okay, so that's kind of another way to go about it. Now, if they have the data that's only in 30 days on their machines and they want to go back further, what they can do is so this is where dedicated nodes come into play. So I'm a node that wants to support the entire baking discussion group. So I will just say node A, and oops, that's fine. We have node B. What will happen is the creator of these groups will, users of these groups are going to basically stake some coin in like native to the blockchain, like near coin or the application's coin dmechat, but I'm not necessarily sure if we need a token on its own right away. But anyway, we'll set up rules so that there's some coin that's required to be staked, or a payment that need. Basically, it's a budget for all the nodes that are hosting the data. So they would stake the amount. Well, they basically are paying to the smart contract, and the smart contract is making sure that the node, as it hosts the data, it's going to pay out all the nodes for basically having the data available. And these nodes will have all the data. So they won't have anything for the groups, but they will have, sorry, they won't have any DMs stored on this, but they will have the entire history. So as a brand new user who wants to get into this group and want to download the data, I can just basically ask the node to get me, the last week's worth of messages, and I'd like to go ahead and read it. Or if I'm Bob and I want to get a message that was 6 months ago, I can basically go ahead and search it, search for that message. So all of that is available here. We do want to also talk about messages, messages in groups to be searchable as much as possible to a certain degree. It doesn't have to be as crazy as setting up a Lucene search index. But a simple, as simple as possible. But messages should be searchable. So that'll help in pulling up older chat messages. What else have we need to cover? Yeah, so we want the data to be encrypted end to end. So this is kind of straightforward when it comes to DMs. I'm not exactly sure what's the best way to do it for groups. However, when we actually start building it out, we will have some solid idea on how to do it. Discoverability for users is well, on one hand, if Bob wants to chat with Lisa, Bob just needs to say, basically, send a message to lisa.guess.dmechat.near. So as it's not necessarily discoverability, but if you know that the other person has an account based on the smart contract registration, then that's enough to know that you can reach that person, right? Also, if you have your own wallet and the account, so for example, this would be like I don't know, another person guy, I guess. So, or maybe I just use my name here. So I have my, let's just say this is not my wallet actually. So for example, there's some person, awesome user, let's just say they have a wallet. When they register, they won't be going through this form of registration. They just register their actual main wallet address with the smart contract, and that's going to help in discoverability. Once users have been discovered, it's kind of I wouldn't say easy, but a straightforward process of connecting them through WebRTC, and there's several libraries that are there. Blocking users is another feature that we will definitely have. So that'll definitely be done directly on the user's SQL machine. Sorry, user's database, where I can set that I don't want to be receiving messages from somebody. But for groups, I don't think you can block somebody unless you block some. Well, in groups you can block someone in that group from messaging you, but the administrator, or basically the person who created that group, can go ahead and block someone or ban someone in that group. The last part is queuing messages if the recipient is offline. So I guess one of the things we can do is to identify whether the person is online or not. We'll definitely need some kind of a service, at least temporarily, to help in determining whether the user is online or not. And for this we may use Firebase, although I'd like to avoid using Firebase for this kind of stuff. Um, we'll see. And then the last part is making everything searchable, right? So it's all about that. That part's about database design a little bit. I'm also curious if SQLite contains the ability to text search. And I guess it looks like it might have the ability to search for text. I wonder if it lets us do fuzzy search. Let's see. Oh, right. FTS is basically, it stands for fuzzy text search. So, or is it full text search? Let's see. Let's read some more. Yeah. So I believe it's this one. Okay, curious. There seems to be some discussion, sorry I'm polite, but there seems to be some discussion on the internet whether or not hang on. I'm going to change the browser here. Okay, so let's just search SQLite fuzzy search. I'm just curious if it's possible, because if it is, then we are in a good position for the choice of using SQLite as the storage on the client side. So let's see. Oh, interesting. Spell fix 1. Yeah, maybe it's something like this might be doable. As long as the extension itself can be supported on that machine, on the actual device. Fuzzy matching. What's this? Thank you, Obsidian Forensics, for this. Yeah, I'll definitely have to do some more research on this one, and before I go much further on this particular path, but generally that's kind of the high level of how we want users to be able to interact with each other. Now, these groups are basically backed by a smart contract, and that smart contract will have information about who the admin for that group is, and any edit, like it'll hold some funds if you do any fundraising, for example, it'll go in that contract. If you want to pay the nodes for hosting the data, that's where the funds will come from. Typically, I'm not exactly sure what's the best way and the safe way for determining whether the node has sufficiently hosted data for these groups. That's something we'll have to figure out as we start building the stuff, because that's kind of off chain almost, because we know that the node is a larger version of this particular app, and it will host more data than just what the individual SQLite server is going, SQLite database is going to be hosting on the actual device. So the fourth part I wanted to make sure we talk about is that every group is backed by this smart contract, and that's going to be baking dot. This would be the address, for example, and it'll contain information like it'll contain information like the admins, funds, expense, and well, it's coming. It's kind of. I'm having a bad click on it here. Okay. It's if it's a little fuzzy, it is a little bit fuzzy for me as well. I haven't really thought this out. I'm kind of just jumping directly into it. I'm thinking it as I do this. So if some of this stuff doesn't make sense, I'm sorry about that. It doesn't. It's not like I thought about this stuff in great detail. Yeah, that's kind of the high level. Yeah. Thanks for watching.